30-minute reviews, beware of spoilers, and exploring hyperspace lanes are all available ad-free. But if you want to support the show, you can go to bewareofspoilers.com and click the support button that's available on the Spotify website. Thank you. Good morning, and welcome, not morning, afternoon, it's now almost 4 o'clock, and welcome to Beware of Spoilers. I am Adam on this Sunday. I'm a little congested. I hope this isn't the recurrence of this fucking sinus infection that I've been battling off and on for the last, 2 months. That would suck. Anyway, here we are on the way back from seeing Bob Marley, One Love, a movie that I hope... We've talked about this before. We talked about it with Spinning Gold, the movie about how Casanova Records came to be and spectacularly flamed out, and how the issue with these movies is if someone from the subject matter's family is directly involved in the production, you tend not to get an honest product, because that person will have a vested interest in making the subject of the biopic as good as possible. Now, I'm not saying that Bob Marley was a bad person or anything of the sort. I want to make that very clear. I'm not saying that there's any evidence that I've ever seen to suggest that Bob Marley was anything besides the person as portrayed in this biopic. That's not the point I'm trying to make. The point I'm trying to make is that this feels like a script that his son wrote as they were going through these things, and they're like, well, let's just make some minor grammatical errors and then go with it. Because it feels very disjointed and not in a interesting way. Like, scene to scene, it's emotionally disjointed, where the emotions don't carry in a way that is, cohesive. I feel like the whole, getting the origins of the songs could have been better executed. And other than that, it kind of is a paint-by-numbers biopic. And I feel weird saying this. The accents that Lashana Lynch and Kingsley Ben-Adir, who played Gravik and played one of the Kens in Barbie, the accents that they adopt, these Jamaican accents, that are not their natural accents, that's not what they actually sound like when they talk, are so thick that subtitles would have been helpful at times. This is a movie where if you want to see it and you want to go to a theater, this is a movie that is perfect for open caption, because it is hard to understand, which undercuts the emotional underpinnings of some scenes. Because if it's a dialogue-heavy scene where you have two characters who are, dealing with deep emotional issues, like dealing with cancer diagnosis and choosing how to deal with treatment and things like that, not being able to understand every word out of the characters' mouths, to put to a situation where you kind of just have to acknowledge, alright, they're talking about cancer, and that sucks, and then you have to bring your own emotions to it, which is not doing the movies, with the movies, having you do its job for it, in the same way that, it's it's not... When I watched The Iron Claw, which is another movie that dealt with deep, deep emotional stuff, it didn't have you bring in your emotions to it. Your emotions help, but the movie lays it out well enough where you're not going to feel like you're left out if you can't understand what's going on. And part of it that really rubbed me the wrong way in the beginning was this idea where it's it kind of feels like they didn't want to grapple with the deeper political issues that were going on. Like, I do not know what the conflict was in Jamaica in the 70s, in the aftermath of British imperialist rule. I don't know what that issue was that was so big. That problem was so big that it led to physical violence and political violence. And I leave this movie not understanding it anymore. And if you're going to sit here and say that it was so big and so far-reaching that Bob Marley himself, using this as an opportunity to show unity and end this, was a huge deal, you need to lay out what was going on. Because you can't, again, assume that everyone comes in knows what happened. Like, it's one of those things where it's like, you need to give us something, and not just like, oh, well, here's them stopping at a checkpoint, holding him at gunpoint. Here is a drive-by shooting. Here is someone attempting to assassinate him. What was it that was going on that put these targets on people? Like, what was it that was going on that put these... And without that explanation, a lot of it just doesn't... It feels non-committal in a way. It feels like they're trying to be, like, apolitical about it and not take a side, which, to an extent, I guess he did by showing, like, look, we can be one unified Jamaica. Maybe it was something innocuous, but we, the audience, don't know that. And in 2024, we, the audience, definitely need laid out, like, okay, here are the key ideological differences between side A and side B, and why they were so willing to go to war with each other, and almost go to civil war in Jamaica over this issue. That needs to be explained. And if not explained, it needs to be, like, a little bit cleaner in execution, so that way we aren't sitting here like, well, I mean, I guess it was bad, and then I guess it was not so bad that, Bob Marley could bring the two political leaders together on stage. And then because we're out of the country for so long, it's like, okay, so what happened in the intervening years? Like, it's a weird kind of situation to put the audience in, like, through this, throughout the movie, where it's like, these are key plot aspects of the movie that are not articulated to the audience. And if it's important for context, important enough that it is hammered home in the movie that this happened and it was important, you have to articulate to the audience why it's important. What was the conflict and what was going on? And without that, it's just kind of like, alright, fine. Like, any movie that talks about, a civil war, will sit there and be like, well, here's why the Civil War was happening. And here's why that was, here's what this side believed, here's what this side believed. Okay, moving on. And even if it is, nonsensical or innocuous, that makes it all the more resonant when you have these people going to fight with each other. And again, it comes back to, was it his son, using his own notes of what was going on at the time when he was 5 years old, 4 or 5 years old, something like that? What was it that? And him being like, well, that's what happened. That's how I remember it. And it's like, well, did you remember more of the nuance of what was going on? Or, I'm not saying nuances in both sides had 100% right. I don't know. I got in my car, I went to Best Buy, which is a whole other issue, and then went to, came back, got gas, and now I'm recording this on my way back. And I watched this movie, and I feel like there is potential for a good story here. And it's the same thing with Casablanca Records, which is ultimately what makes this movie fail so much. And it's the same thing with Madam Web. We talked about this earlier in the week with Madam Web. It's this idea that we have a movie where you have something that could have been cool, something that could have been interesting, and the pieces are there. You have key pieces that do work. I think that the performances, aside from the accent work, the performances from Lashana Lynch and Kingsley Ben-Adir are strong. I just feel like we trying to get through the movie, maybe not maybe not tone down the accent, but again, subtitles. Like, or reshoot the parts where you can't understand them that easily. Like, that's one of the things when you make a documentary, and I'm pointing this out, like, as someone who took a documentary filmmaking class at one point, which again, not the same thing as making a documentary, I know, was always use subtitles. Always make sure that the viewer can understand what you're trying to say. Make sure that the viewer is clear on what's being said. Is something that was there. So make sure that your titles are up long enough that you can read it twice. Make sure that your subtitles are legible. Make sure that your Make sure that your it's clear who's talking and all that kind of stuff. And this movie lacks a lot of that, like very basic fundamentals. And again, subtitles would not be a bad thing. I've watched movies and TV shows where it's like characters are talking, and yeah, they're talking in heavily accented English, or even like I've watched TV shows where people have a very thick Southern accent, and they put up subtitles so that it's like, yeah, we know you can't understand this person. Like, we understand that. You should have done it here too. And a fundamental inability to understand your protagonist is going to cause problems for resonating. It's also questioned, like, you couldn't find a Jamaican actor who actually had a Jamaican accent. You had to find Kingsley Benadir and have him, like, do what he did. Like, it feels like that decision as a whole feels a little bit off. And the same with Lashana Lynch. Even though they did a great job acting, it's one of those things where it's like, it feels weird in 2024, really shot in like 2022, 2023, like, it feels odd that you're doing this still. I thought we kind of moved past this. It might be a good streaming movie where you can turn on subtitles. I could see that working, actually. Like, this is a great Paramount Plus movie when it comes to Paramount Plus in like 2-3 months. Like, that kind of thing could be interesting to see how it translates. No pun intended. But, like, I think that would be an interesting experiment to see if the movie is better when you watch it there. I'm not going to do that, because I don't want to say better things to do with my time, but other things going on. I don't have time to rewatch Bob Marley One Love, because I don't think a movie's good enough to warrant a second watch through. In the same way that I think most musical biopics aren't good enough to warrant a second watch through. Like, I enjoyed Bohemian Rhapsody enough, but I'm not going to watch it a second time. I enjoyed Rocket Man enough, but I'm not going to watch it a second time. I can't think of a single one where I was like, let me watch that a second time. And maybe Walk the Line, but I watched it the first time when I was young, so, I don't know. I feel like this is something where it's like, this was not and look, there is always the possibility that this is not the worst musical biopic coming out this year, because we do have the Amy Winehouse one coming out this year. So, we'll see how that plays out, but I think there's a chance the Amy Winehouse one ends up being worse or in worse taste. Yeah, I guess if you're a filmmaker and you're gonna make a movie about a subject, a person who actually existed, I think the less involvement from the family, the better. Is I think the moral of the story over the last few years. The better movies about real people have come from, people who made biopics about people who, didn't quite 100%, the people who they were about weren't heavily involved, because you get more honesty out of it. You get in a weird way more authenticity out of it, because it's authentically the person, not the person, as they want to be portrayed or as their family wants them portrayed. Which, again, not saying Bob Marley did anything that would indicate that he was up to anything nefarious. That's not the point I'm trying to make. The point I'm trying to make is, like, the involvement of Ziggy Marley does a lot to be like, oh, so he's invested in making sure that his dad comes out looking fantastic in this, which he does, and to his credit, Bob Marley comes out of this looking like a saint, which is obviously what the movie is trying to do. The movie is here to canonize Bob Marley, and it succeeds on that front. Whether or not it tells an accurate story of the life of Bob Marley, I'm not 100% on that. I don't know. But on that note, I think that's a good place to wrap up for today. Got a lot of stuff this week. So, let's just go through some of it. Tomorrow morning, we have a short episode of 30-minute reviews because I was very congested when I recorded it, so I got like 15 minutes out. And then, we'll move on from there. It's a shorter episode, but we get through the news stories and all of that, and we talk about the Marvels a little bit. Not a ton. Don't get your hopes up too much. Tuesday, the Backlog Files. I go into Pokemon Puzzle League and Pokemon Puzzle Challenge. Wednesday, Josie and I are back. We talk about Dark Force Rising and The Mandalorian and Grogu and other things as usual. Then Thursday, we have the first 3 episodes of The Bad Batch Season 3. Friday, we talk about Drive-Away Dolls over here on 30-minute reviews. And the Bad Batch is also on 30-minute reviews. Saturday, we'll do a review in progress kind of thing for Avatar The Last Airbender. And Sunday, we will be doing, what was the other one? Dune Part 2. That'll be late Sunday evening, Dune Part 2, because I'm seeing it at 7 o'clock on Sunday, so I think I'll be getting out around 10, so by 11 p.m. it'll be out, the review, so just get yourself ready for that. But we will wrap up there for today. And until our next episode, have a great rest of your week.